There are only so many phone numbers in the world. So I suppose it's natural that some people would have an almost identical one. Most of us have done it, called or texted one of our friends only to get a number wrong and end up talking to a total stranger. I suppose what happened to me and Derek could have happened to anyone. It was a cold morning, one of those days where you actually find yourself wishing that you had the guts to buy earmuffs, and who cares if you look silly? At least you'll be warmer. When I came home from the weekly ASDA shop to find that someone had left me a message. Not on my mobile, on my landline. Obviously, I was confused. Who still uses landlines? My friends don't know my home phone number. Hell, I don't even know my home phone number. Do telemarketers leave messages? I thought, sorry, you're not home. Please call me back so we can talk about that new insurance. I pressed the button. This is the message that I got. It might not be word for word, but I remember it pretty well. Hi, Carol. Jennifer here. How are you doing? Just thought I'd say it's going great. The chicks love me and everything's going to be fine. I deleted it. I considered calling the person back, but I chickened out. There's no way I was going through something that awkward voluntarily. My boyfriend Derek, he found the next message when he came over to see me. I'd been in the shower and hadn't heard the phone ring. It was about a week after the first message, and I'd almost forgotten about it.
Hey,
He called up.
somebody called you.
I put on a bathrobe and came downstairs and played the message.
Hi, Carol. Jennifer here. The chicks are getting used to me now. Their mother seems happy to let them play with me. We're all doing fine.
I couldn't believe it. What are the chances of somebody getting the same wrong number twice in a row? Derek suggested that they could have written it into their phone wrong, so I was now on their contact list under Carol's name.
You should call her back.
He said.
Otherwise, she's just gonna keep calling you.
Can't you do it? So he did, but there was no answer. We tried it again and again over the next few days, but nothing. Then exactly a week later, I got another message. This time, they called while I was at work.
Hey, Carol. Jennifer here. Just keeping you updated. The chicks are doing brilliantly. I think I've finally got their trust now, so I'll be able to start Operation Morningstar. Wish me luck.
After that, the messages came weekly, and we started to enjoy them. Don't think we meant to be nosy. I tried to tell Jennifer that she had the wrong number, but it seemed like she only turned her phone on when it was time to make those calls, and she only seemed to make them when I was out. Don't ask me why she didn't think it was odd that Carol never called back. Can you blame me for giving up? Soon, listening to the messages became part of our weekly routine. I'd always call Derek when the new ones came. Even some of our friends wanted to hear the updates on Jenny the crazy chicken farmer, as we started calling her. I felt slightly guilty about that, but this Jennifer person did sound a bit weird, and she was so obsessed with the chicks. She began mentioning her favorites by name and giving little descriptions of their personalities. There was Billy.
He's a real bully, always trying to get his own way. He keeps getting into fights.
Macy.
She's a sweetheart, definitely my special favorite. She's so good-natured and so adorable. Good candidate for Morningstar.
Bobby.
He's an idiot. Yesterday he fell in the pond and I had to fish him out. I think he was pretending to be a duck.
And Katie.
Tends to stick close to her mother when she can and likes to sit on her own in the corner. Very shy.
We actually got quite attached. Derek stopped eating chicken, saying it just doesn't feel right. We looked forward to the messages and debated over what Operation Morningstar could be. Derek thought it must be some sort of a chicken show, since she said Macy was a candidate because she looked sweet. I thought they might be selling the chicks as pets and even wondered if we might buy one. We were both wrong. One Tuesday, I came home to find a new message. I called Derek, and he came over, and we both listened. And this is what we heard.
Hi, Carol. Jennifer here. Operation Morningstar is complete. I chose Macy in the end. She didn't struggle when I picked her up and took her away from the others. She was very good. True, she wiggled and squeaked a bit when I held her up against the block, but my hand was pretty tight around her neck, so she couldn't make too much a noise. It only took one axe blow to sever her head. I'm quite proud of that. She should roast up pretty nicely.
Derek ran to the bathroom to throw up. Needless to say, we were shocked. I mean, sure, I know what goes on at chicken farms. I eat Nando's, but I hadn't expected any of Jenny's chickens to get eaten, especially not Macy. We didn't talk about the call afterwards. I didn't even want to acknowledge its existence by deleting it. 3 hours later, a police officer knocked on my door and told me I needed to come in for questioning. It seemed that a suspect in a case they were investigating had made some phone calls to my house. I explained the situation and played her the last call. When it got to the bit where Macy was slaughtered, the officer went green, and for a second I thought she was going to throw up.
How did you listen to that?
She asked, once she'd recovered, and I'd made her a cup of coffee.
I have a strong stomach.
I told her, which was true, and
anyway,
I added, trying to make her feel better,
it was only chicken.
She looked at me like I was insane. It seemed that Jennifer and Carol weren't chicken farmers. Carol is still out there, and they don't know what her job was, but Jennifer is still in prison waiting trial. She taught preschool. My late father was born with a defective liver. This condition caused him to have acute liver failure many times throughout his years. There's no cure. It all depends on the body's ability to heal and intensive care afterwards for many months. Growing up, he was able to live a relatively normal life, eating healthy and staying fit, but every few years his condition would rear its ugly head, causing him to develop symptoms such as he would vomit massive amounts of blood. Blood would also dribble and pass out of all his body orifices. I will never forget his screams of sheer agony when the doctors would attempt to stop the bleeding by inserting a gastric balloon down his nose and pumping it up. He has told me that it felt like his insides were being ripped apart. But to the story, my father was once again hospitalized for his reoccurring condition. The doctors predicted his impending death and advised my mother to ready herself emotionally. My mother spent days beside his hospital bed praying and watching over him. One night, my father was at his worst. His heart stopped 3 times that day, and the doctors brought him back every single time. He was probably not going to make it through the night. My mother was tired and just sitting there, looking at his face and softly talking to him, when she saw 2 tall, dark, cloaked figures. One had an ox head and the other had a horse face. According to Chinese mythology, they are believed to be the guardians of the underworld. Their role is to escort the newly dead to the underworld for their next reincarnation. They glided over and stopped by my father's bed. In all honesty, my mother wasn't the least afraid. Instead, she started silently pleading with them.
Please don't take my husband away. We're only 30 years old. We just got married not too long ago. Our 2 daughters are only 4 and 3. I cannot raise them by myself. I need him, please. If there's a God, help us. I beg you. Even if it's just a little more time, a few more years, let him watch his daughters grow up a bit. Let my daughters have some time with their father.
She claimed the guardians moved on and disappeared. The next morning, nurses found the elderly man that was sharing the same room as my father to be dead. Miraculously, my father started getting better overnight and healing. He was discharged after 3 weeks and had a great and speedy recovery. Everything went well until 12 years later. He had another relapse, and this time he didn't make it. He fought bravely and hung on for 3 weeks. In the end, we told him it was okay to let go this time. We'll manage. We'll take care of Mom. He took his last breath shortly afterwards. He passed away when I was 16 years old, just after witnessing my high school graduation and me entering university.
Happy Halloween. Leave now while you still can.
Leave now before Master finds you.
Who is that knocking at my door? Be gone with you.
A little background. I grew up in the ghetto of California. I never knew my father, and my mother was a prostitute junkie, so I lived with my grandparents. We were a Mexican Roman Catholic household, and we've had the house my grandparents lived in for generations. This house has been forsaken and has had many atrocities committed in it. My father hung himself in the guest room. My great-grandmother shot her daughter, not fatally, in that house. My mother made meth in the basement for years. My brother and I were both raped in that house, and my aunt was shot in a drive-by in that house. But if you looked for any article about any of this, you won't find it. No one cared about the poor people colored in the ghetto, and I promise you, there was no God in that town. When I was 15, I shared a bedroom with my cousins. Let's call them Lupe, also 15, Maria, 19, and Tasha, 6. One night, Lupe woke up screaming this blood-curdling scream, and we all got up to check on her. She had a huge red welt the shape of a handprint on her face and was crying so hard. My grandma came into the room and hit Maria, Tasha, and I because she thought we did it, despite the hand being too big to be any of ours. We talked to Lupe after she calmed down and asked her what was wrong. She said she was having a good dream, but woke up after getting hit. The next few nights were tense, but nothing happened until a week later. Tasha was sitting at our desk, doing homework while we were just hanging out in the room. Suddenly, she started convulsing in the chair, and we ran to get our neighbor, who was an EMT. We couldn't afford a hospital, so the neighbor just put her on her side and did a few other things I didn't see because I left out of fear. After the seizure passed, she refused to tell any of us what happened. All she said was that the devil is real and he was mad. My grandparents proceeded to bless the house with holy water, burn various plants, and place twice as many crosses, Virgin Mary statues, and candles around the house. She also got our priest to bless the house. After this, we all wore rosaries and went to church as often as possible. A month went by with slamming doors, random knocks, whispers, unknown screams, bangs, and the usual poltergeist-type things. Then, Maria started to act weird. She would leave the room whenever anyone else would enter. She would mumble to herself, ditched school, and stopped showering. She would walk aimlessly around the house and never made eye contact with anyone but me. And when she did, she would look at me with disgust. One night, my uncle woke up with her staring at him in his locked room. She would bite her nails till they bled, then drip the blood into a cup. Eventually, my aunt threw away the cup of blood, and Maria got so mad she moved out. After she moved, while cleaning out her space, we found dead cats, bloody tampons, and eyes from unspecified animals. I haven't seen her since, but was told she now lives on Skid Row. This is a street inhabited by the homeless in LA, for those of you who don't know. Things kept happening to my family members in that house. An uncle started seeing his dead wife, the one who died in a drive-by. My aunt had a stillborn. My grandpa developed schizophrenia, and my brother and I started seeing a man I assume was my father. Apparitions and such began to appear to everyone. I eventually moved out at 17, not needing to become emancipated because no one really cared that I left. After I was 23, I adopted Tasha because she was molested by my grandfather and we moved far away. I still keep in touch with Tasha, and we share stories about that house and our experiences. But we all agreed to never, ever go back to that house, nor talk to any family members. I swear to God, almost all of them went crazy. Tasha and I go to therapy often, but have been able to overcome the pain and suffering of that house.
I was in high school, the oldest of 5 kids to a single mother. This was the time of dial-up, and we only had a single computer, which was mine. Most of the time, my brother could only look on in envy at me playing my computer games, which meant that my brother took the opportunity to get on and play whenever it presented itself. I was downstairs talking to my mom when I heard my brother weakly call out my name. I went upstairs into my room to find my brother, who was 6 at the time, had climbed up to the closet. Without a thought, I reached up and picked him up out of the closet, and he said something backwards in a demonic voice. I don't remember what he said, but it was just one word. After that, my brother didn't play by himself in my room. This wasn't the most disturbing thing that I remember from my childhood, but I remembered this based on reading another post that involved something similar. My own encounter with something like this was in my dream. All throughout my youth and into adulthood, I was assailed by ghosts in my dreams, to the point where every other night, by the time you read of my brother's encounter, I had to fight just to wake up. It was this time that he came. I could tell it was a dream, and I was sitting in one of those dressing room stations in front of a mirror. You know, with those lights all around it. Except that looking into the mirror, everything was blue shifted. My reflection begins to talk about how he could protect me, and similar promises of power whose details escape me, but basically he was offering me shelter. He came more than once. The hard part for me is that I'm not sure if I agreed to it or not.
Okay, I've never done this before, but here it goes. This happened to me on Halloween night, 2015. It was my favorite holiday of the year, and it was finally here. My first Halloween without being chaperoned by a parent. We live in a pretty wooded area, but houses are scattered about here and there. I dressed as the stranger from the video game Until Dawn. My friend dressed as a zombie, and my little brother dressed as the Pyro from Team Fortress 2. My friend and I were the age 13 at the time, and my little brother being 12. We were so excited to go alone for the first time. We waited until 9 p.m., so it was plenty dark, and added to that creepy feeling of going alone. We began going down our dirt road to the barely lit street, making a right towards the houses. We trick-or-treated for a while and were almost satisfied with the amount of candy in our bags. We never get that much candy anyway because of the limit of houses, and decided to walk back home. We were about halfway home when my friend nudged my shoulder and pointed at something at the edge of the forest. It was a dark figure just standing still. I thought it was a tree at first, but I could see the outline of it from the light of the street lamp. We got a little creeped out, but continued walking. A little ways up, I heard a rustle in the bushes, and I'm pretty sure we all heard it, because my little brother and my friend were both looking at me with that what the heck kind of look. We all turned around and saw the man, closer this time, at the edge of the forest, looking like he was trying to hide behind a tree. We all started walking faster, trying to get away from him, After all, we were almost home. About 3 minutes later, we heard another rustle, and we all turned around quickly only to see, you freaking guessed it, the same man standing there. We all just stood there watching him, giving him that we freaking see you look. But then we heard something that made our spines shiver. We heard another rustle to see another outline of a person beside him. We all knew we were going to die or worse if we didn't get out of there. We turned around and bolted towards my house, taking hard breaths as we did. I glanced behind me only to see 2 men gaining on us, but staying on the edge of the forest, not crossing into the road. As soon as my house was in sight, we all bolted to the woods beside it to try to get into the back door, hoping they wouldn't know where we lived. We made it through the sticks and branches in our way, and ran up the wooden steps into our house. We burst the glass sliding door open and locked it. My mom asked what was going on, and we explained while my dad called the police. That night ruined trick-or-treating for me, so now I stay home with my friends and just watch a scary movie. To everyone out there going alone trick-or-treating, make sure you have a phone or a friend with you. I made the mistake of not bringing a phone, which could have made the situation a lot worse if they caught up to us.
Long-time lurker, first-time posting. I hate the fact that I have a story to even post to this subreddit, but it goes to show you that when living in a major metropolitan city, you never know what walks of life you will pass by or drop off. So, little backstory. In 2003, I was 16 years old, employed at an urban clothing store here on the south side of Chicago. At the time, I had a manager who was in his early 20s by the name of Anthony. Anthony was pretty arrogant and obnoxious, but overall, he was a pretty cool guy. I used to give him shit and tease him when it came to his approaching the ladies because he always seemed timid and too aggressive. I was and still am a ladies' man, so yeah, I was being an asshole. After working at this place for about 3 months, Anthony asked me if I would drop him off at home. It wasn't far from the direction I was headed in, so I dropped him off maybe twice a week for the next month or so. Now, let me tell you, these car rides were quite uncomfortable. This guy, as much as we spoke at work, would not speak and sort of just kept looking straight. It got to the point that his awkwardness went from entertaining to straight creepy. Fast forward 3 to 4 years later, I'm watching the news as they go into detail of a horrific crime committed by a Comcast installation worker. Apparently, the Comcast worker entered 2 homes he was due for an installation, raped, beat, and strangled 2 women. The real uncomfortable thing is this happened on 2 different occasions, and after the first murder, the gentleman was arrested and questioned but released and sent back to work, which allowed him to strike again. As the picture of his mugshot flashed the screen, I froze. It was Anthony. Now, growing up on the south side of Chicago, I have grown up and befriended a fair share of people who grew up to be murderers, but this took the cake. So, Anthony, let's not meet, because that means I'm in jail with you.
Sprung out my head like new trauma on the block when a fire burns out and night pours in. If you find the incantation that wrung you here, in being, wanting, here's form to this, authorities a sung fiction. New, trembling thing doesn't yet know why it was born, neither do I.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the stories, smash that like button, comment, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. All that really helps get the stories out. Thank you, and remember, be good to each other.